This week's episode of This Is Only a Test is made possible with support from Storyblocks. Every creator should try a Storyblocks membership. They make it so easy for you to bring all your stories to life without having to worry about additional time, budget, or resources to add that extra special quality to your video. Storyblocks is an ever-growing library of over 1 million high-quality, royalty-free stock assets, including 4K footage, music, images, templates for Premiere and After Effects, everything you need to get started and to give your videos that extra oomph. You can even use Storyblocks if you're a member of a large creative team or marketing agency. It works for teams of all sizes. Learn more and subscribe today at storyblocks.com/onlyaTest. Again, that's storyblocks.com/onlyaTest.
Hey, let's start the show!
For Friday, March 5th, 2021, welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. First of all, welcome to the show this week, but what a weird week. In my mind, it was Friday yesterday. We didn't record on Thursday. Podcast come out late, so I apologize if you're waiting on this podcast, but we schedules had to align, and Marvel releases WandaVision on Friday mornings, not Thursday nights. So that gives you a sense of the reason why podcast is a little late this week. But I'm joined by two amazing colleagues. Got Kishore Hari here. Kishore, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
And game developer, verified, certified, credited game developer, software engineer, Jeremy Williams.
You guys got any? You guys get? It's going fine. It's going fine. I'm busy.
Busy, yeah, I know. But hopefully people reached out after last week's podcast. Anyone reach out and talk about going into the Blizzard game compilation and finding your credits there?
Not one.
Well, there you go, listeners. That's your homework. First, buy the game, head to the credits, marvel at, not just you, but Joey did some work on that too.
That's true.
Joey from Tested. He did some video production work on some of those interviews. I didn't realize that.
He's in the credits. Yeah. Drew brought him over, and it was great. I was old family.
Exactly. So it's more than just the games. It's also the behind the scenes retrospectives and video footage, all produced during the lockdown. Again, check it out. Give them their due props. But how are you guys doing otherwise this past week? What's been going on? Anything new?
Speaking of lockdown, do you know it's been, I think this week it'll be a year since we last recorded in person.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Wow.
You know what? I don't know if I want to go back. And that's crazy because I hated this to begin with. I really, really did. Like, I was like in person or nothing. And that was a lot. I felt the same way about the VR shoot that we did, where it's just like, if I can't see you guys, I can't relate to you, and I can't. And so this is sort of like, it's sort of okay, but it's not the same thing. We have to be careful about each other's audio. We've talked over each other. And in person, you can make eye contact. There's more body language, and it just feels, like we're really sharing in the experience. Whereas this is sort of like a glorified telephone call. What do you guys think? Do you want to go back to in person?
I'm afraid to go back in person, not because of the pandemic or because of COVID or anything, and that's obviously a concern. We don't want to actually meet up until we feel physically comfortable, but like the psychological aspect of having a conversation with any person that's not in my family, in my bubble, in person, I don't know if I'm ready for that. What? I haven't had a real hour-long conversation with someone, having to make eye contact with them. I don't know. I feel kind of more comfortable looking at the camera here, talking to you guys, and you're in my head. It's like I'm listening to the show, but I get to also participate.
All right, so we have to have an intervention with Norm where he talks to real people again. I think that's the first warning sign of this. But Jeremy, think about that wonderful little roadcaster whose soul is being is just slowly wearing away because we're not there to mess around with its buttons. I mean, there's some aspects that I agree. Like all of this is a lot easier this way, to do it this way. But I miss going into the office and having, meaningless like side conversations. I miss that with my job. I miss that like running into people on the street. Um, I, I miss all of it. I'm ready for it to return. So
For
even though
for
it comes with all sorts of pain and it'll take some getting used to, sign me up.
See, I maybe this is like you guys also want to go back to the movie theaters, and I'm not on that page either. But for me, like the reason why I've converted to this, being approving of the Zoom podcast is because you can get in and you can get out, and you can get like back to whatever it is that you have to take care of that day. Whereas when we were doing podcast in person, it was basically the day. I mean, at a bare minimum, it was the entire morning. You have to commute, park, you know, you have to socialize. You have to, and then you record, and then there's always more socializing, and then there's inevitably lunch because you generously would take us out.
Jeremy, I get a sense that if you could just lie in bed all day and just like teleport your brain virtually into your work without having to move, that'd be the most convenient thing for you. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
there's got to be getting out into the world. I think the fresh air is a nice break. I think one of the reasons for you guys, I got a sense of that recording in person was an appeal. Was a nice break from the routine. But obviously, there are a lot of responsibilities, and it does eat up a lot of day. Thankfully, we're not at that point yet. We don't have to make that decision. It's still going
Oh,
to be remote.
I'm sorry. I've made the decision.
We might have to set up a telepresence machine
Right.
for you, Jeremy, for that to work. But it does, the fact that you bring up it's been a year. I try to go back to the mindset of like it was so abrupt. We were one day going into the office normally, very normally, and then NBA season stopped, halted. And we just like, let's try doing this remotely. And I haven't even gone back to take a look at what the first podcast we did remotely sound like, but I'm sure it was inelegant to say the least.
I just really remember reading this one blog post on, I think it came out on March 2nd. So just a year ago, a few days ago, and being like, oh no. Like there were already like warning signs everywhere, but I when remember reading this blog post, I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not good. I had no idea that it was going to be a year, and obviously, we still have some time yet to go. But that was when I really woke up to what was happening. Um, it's amazing how much has changed during this time period, though.
Yeah, and businesses and operations, people who, I don't think that you hear about the big companies at least ton of space that's changed their mind and decisions to not build out big corporate headquarters and campuses in traditional ways that they used to. But even the idea of going into an office 5 days a week, if productivity can happen, and if there's a nice balance and a benefit of being more surrounded by your family or working from home a couple days a week, I feel like that's where we're gonna eventually converge, at least for the people who can afford to do that and who are lucky enough to be able to work from home and don't have to actually travel and go physically in.
Yeah, I know Facebook's already committed to 50%, going forward will be remote.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things to consider. Daycare, childcare. There's home internet. How does that get? There's a lot of logistics to figure out. We were forced into the situation. The new normal has not even been settled yet. We're going to look back. It's an ever changing thing, and I think we're going to look back in a year from now, and things will probably still be radically different and not what it looked like back in 2018 or early 2019. But let's move on because there is a bunch of story to talk about. So let's quickly start the top story this week.
Top story this week.
This story is for you, Jeremy. We pride ourselves in being early adopters, being ahead of the curve. Remember back in 2017 when Bitcoin was on the rise and we were like, we got to get in on this. Our families don't trust us. This new form of currency is going to change the world. It's going to be a smart investment. And if only we trusted ourselves, I think.
You were first to the party, and you left the party too early was the problem.
Oh my goodness, I left the party way too early. Oh, Twitter account at Norm's Bitcoin. I miss you so much. But it was a fun adventure while we were on it, and I think the monetary aspect obviously is a tough part to stomach, but I can't. There are no regrets in life. Only looking forward, and so there's a whole new opportunity for you forward thinkers out there, and that is in the world of NFTs. It's everywhere. We're talking about stonks 3 weeks ago. Now it's all about NFTs. The world comes at you fast. Non fungible tokens. What are these? Why is it changing the art world? And how is it tied to cryptocurrency? Is the topic of our top story. Have you guys heard about NFTs? Have you been following people, artists who have been selling NFTs or people who have been buying NFTs on social media?
No, but Kishore, you mentioned them this morning, so I know you have.
Don't know anyone that's purchased one from what I can tell. The reason I brought up NFTs is because I've actually heard about sports teams approaching some of their ticket sales in an NFT model. Like that you have let's say Norm buys a ticket to the Golden State Warriors game and he wants to sell it. Well, there's always been he owns the ticket. He can just do whatever. He can go on Craigslist. And now they've set up different fan sites to do that. But the one thing that happens when he sells that is that transaction is between him and the next person. The team has no ownership over it. But what if there was a system where the team got a cut every time that transaction happened? 5%, 10%, whatever it is. You can imagine the same thing for ticket concerts, for tours, on down the line. And that's when the idea of NFTs came to me. I know it's being talked mostly about in digital art and Pokemon cards to a certain extent, but that's when I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's money here. That's why we're talking about it.
Oh, absolutely. I think we might be getting ahead of ourselves as one of the kind of technical benefits of an NFT, but fundamentally, it all goes back to what is cryptocurrency and how do things like Bitcoin and Ethereum operate and get tracked. And uh, we don't have Gunther on the podcast this week, so I'm going to do my best, Gunther. I'm going to be that guy in the office. Remember that guy who would just be talking about crypto all the time? We have that guy. He's Gunther. But from osmosis, I'll try to explain it as best I can. And the system of Bitcoin works because it was designed computationally so that there will be a artificial scarcity for this digital currency. Compute cycles are needed to solve a complex math problem, and over time more of the currency is unearthed, so the supply of what's out there increases to a finite point. So by design of Bitcoin, there will only be so much, but the amount of compute and amount of effort it takes to unearth and unlock the currency increases exponentially over time. And so that helps create this artificial scarcity. And the fact that it requires a lot of investment, not just in dollars, but in compute time and kind of trust in the system, that is what gives it value. The fact that people have mentally and financially bought in to the idea of Bitcoin.
Do you know how many?
How many Bitcoins total? I don't know.
21 million. I just looked it up.
21 million. Okay.
Eventually. Not yet, but
sure.
As you're saying, that's the cap.
Yes, but I think the important part is that as with any currency, and the supporters of crypto would make this argument, it's a fiat. It means that we believe in the US dollar because we trust the government to regulate it, to dispense of it, the Fed to change the interest rates, and the economics of it is a system of faith that we believe in. That's what gives it value, not just the fact. Even with things like gold and diamonds, right? The scarcity of it, yes, is tied to some real world physical thing. We can only dig up so much gold. We can only unearth so many diamonds, but if you look at the models, it's rare or it's priced a certain way because people are willing to pay a certain price for it, and they trust the system where if you pay a certain price, you can maybe make that money back, or the fluctuations are within the reason of it. And the faith in a cryptocurrency is the fact that all the computations that are being done when people mine for Bitcoin, when compute cycles are used and spent to monitor the transaction, is a shared ledger. It's a shared document, essentially. Think of it as the biggest Excel spreadsheet in the world that has tracked every single transaction. And so there is this, it's while the identities of who's making these transactions is private, the actual transactions themselves is documented and shared between all of the users. And so that's this kind of shared faith in the fact that it's tracked. You can't fake a Bitcoin because it's all, we know what part of a Bitcoin got sold here or there. We know how much this wallet owns and how much it's moved around. But that
And
tracking mechanism is the value and what has allowed the network Ethereum and other crypto networks to not only track the value of and the transactions of the currency, the crypto, but other things as well. Built into the Ethereum network is ability for you to say, for an artist to say, to create a thing of value. You can call it a digital Pokemon card, right? And say there's only one of these, and I'm going to sell it, and that transaction of being sold is going to forever be written into this digital ledger that is the Ethereum network.
So one question. Let's do the art example. I'm an artist. I make a piece of art, let's say a painting, and
Sure.
I sell it as and I make a digital painting, like to make this easy,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
sell it as an NFT to you, Norm.
Yes. What do I get as the
Yeah, you
purchaser of
get
this NFT? I
yeah.
get the concept of ownership. I get that
So
it's
you
written.
own that. I may have been the artist that made it, but I don't own it anymore.
Well, it depends on the terms in which you, the artist, set out, right? Because just like any fine piece of art that you sell, the artist can maintain certain rights. In
Mhm.
the traditional model of selling art, the artist can maintain reproduction rights, can maintain, copyright over certain imagery, the characterizations that portrayed or whatever in there. But what's being sold is that one piece of art. Now, in physical art, it usually is the original piece of art. It's a thing that you can move around. In digital art, it's not the copy, the digital, the bits and bytes of the image, because that is can still be shared, but it's the concept of the ownership that's been granted. So the purchaser may have the right to make copies, for themselves, to use it commercially. It's kind of like, we're overcomplicating this, but it's kind of like an illustration or a concept art contract. An artist may get paid as freelance artists to paint up a painting for a magazine, and the magazine owns that piece of art, but the artist can make a print of it, and there are rights that are shared there.
right, so
And this,
there's it's like a deed to the house, maybe, or the title to a
yeah,
car. It's a document that basically says you own this thing, and there's a record of it that other people can reference.
and that record is the important part, because there's a record of shared faith that we all believe in that crypto network. And going back to Kishore, the example of how it can apply to things beyond art, even, is that record you can build into the contract, so to speak, stipulations, because it's all trackable, that the original owner can see, or the original artist or the original seller of a basketball ticket can see benefits as that item moves further away from the original owner and down the secondary markets and tertiary markets. So there are a bunch of not galleries, but there are a bunch of websites that broker in this, and you can create that, and then can create the token for the artist and put it into the ledger, and basically act as marketplaces, whether it's auction sites or straight up flat fees for these NFTs. And right now we see a ton of artists doing it. Grimes done it. You had Kings of Leon announce they were going to be the first band to release an album as an NFT. In the very same way that that asshole bought the Wu Tang album, right? Like it's like that, but as opposed to a physical thing, it's just the markings on the in the ledger, in the digital ledger.
So at a concept level, I'm fine with this because yeah, why is it? I mean, it's no different than Beanie Babies and Pokemon cards and all these other like forms of art
It's
that we've
not.
deemed as collectibles that like people ascribe a price. Like it's weird to to ascribe this to like a stock photo or something like that because like the whole point of the NFT market as it exists now is about ascribing value to it. Like so it has to be something that carries some weight to it. It can't just be like some thing that's relatively common, even if it's unique. The
Look,
one thing though,
yeah. Oh, sorry. Didn't realize you weren't. Go.
I was gonna say, like the place that I concerns me is this feels like ripe for fraud. And like a couple different forms of fraud, not fraud from like the ownership kind of standpoint, but because you can create NFTs out of nothing, it feels like a an opportunity for celebrities to like monetize elements of themselves um to the detriment of their fans because it's not a thing they're like manufacturing, it's something they design. So I think we'll see things that are akin to fraud. And then I think it's ripe for tax fraud too, because you can all of a sudden create value out of nothing and write down
Yeah.
assets, especially if you're in crypto. So
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Jeremy, you're saying?
The thing that bothers me is that, and I know maybe I'm too pessimistic about things like this, but the thing that where I get stopped at is that this is basically trying to give value to something that is digital and can be duplicated. It's supposed to give it more value. It's supposed to give it the same kind of value that physical items have. I think that, and that's why people love this idea, like especially people who are selling stuff, right? This is an idea that people who are selling stuff really, really like. And I don't think it's necessarily great for the rest of us unless you're the super rich and you're looking to spend your money on rare and interesting things. I feel like that album, the Wu-Tang album, the fact that it was a physical thing that he had the only copy of mattered. I mean, if I have a GIF and I own it, but I send you a copy, nobody cares who owns it. They just want to see it. And that's the way the digital stuff is supposed to be. I mean, there really is like an information wants to be free element here that is being ignored. That this whole like concept of like, how can we fool people into thinking they own something that can be copied infinitely? It's like, oh, let's make something on the blockchain, and we'll tell people that means something. And now, here we are. And now like everyone's discussing it, it's in the headlines, and people think they can buy digital artwork. And I'm not on board yet. Yeah, I know they can. I know they can.
I like that you're putting value in the physical, Jeremy. I put value in your physical presence for podcasting too.
But let me
right.
play devil's advocate for a second though, Jeremy. So like the first edition of Wuthering Heights, that's got to have some value because it was first edition.
Yeah.
But it's been reprinted a million times. You're saying like the values in reading the book. So why does the first edition carry any more value than this, even though it's physical and not digital? It's the same. Like, so I understand the concept.
Because those atoms have been somewhere. Like they
were atoms too.
I think Jeremy's talking about the ship of Theseus theory.
It was handled by somebody important, perhaps, that like made physical contact. It's why people like signatures that aren't photocopies. It's because there's a lineage of experience that an object has had that now has wound up in your hands.
Guess what? That lineage now is through the blockchain. It's the ledger. How many, like, the promise is that the piece of art that was sold for $100,000 later will be investment that will be worth more because of where it's gone through the blockchain. And again, it goes back to why people care about Bitcoin, and one of the reasons, I guess, as why people care about crypto at all is this faith, this artificial manifestation of scarcity and a shared communal trust in that system.
I'm on board with Bitcoin. I'm on board with crypto. I get that. But the idea that my Bitcoin is it shouldn't matter to you that mine is like unique in some way. It just matters how many there are of a thing. So I kind of understand, like, if we could actually limit the number of GIFs that you could copy, if somebody could embed into the universe a limit on the number of times an MP3 could be copied, like, the music industry would have loved that, and that would have solved a lot of problems for them. But I mean, that just isn't how it works. I mean, the fact that I say that I own a GIF should mean nothing to anybody.
It should mean, except again, you go back to the ultra rich, and so much of this feels like in the world of expensive, high class, quote unquote, art, where people just have so much disposable income that they just want the bragging rights.
Right.
They want the sticker that says they have something other people don't, because when you're in that upper echelon of crazy amounts of unfathomable money, you're looking for scarcity to stand out. And that's where all this, and that's like the tipping point of why this may not be sustainable or a good idea in the long run. Because while right now it's early and people want to be the first band or the first artist to release something and sell something, when you have like the William Shatners of the world, who literally has been putting out NFTs and selling them, and like every person selling it and doing it, it kind of the supply will overwhelm the demand at some point, and the economics of it, and then it becomes more of a practical transactional thing, like you're a way for ticket holders to not to get in on the scalping game, to dip their toes into the secondary markets, and becomes more of an economic decision, less than this, than the news making thing that it is right now. And there's also the
This is the salesman's version of Scientology. Like, people are being fooled into thinking something exists, and it doesn't. I'm telling you.
How much of this is a consequence of the pandemic? There's a lot of people that have money they wouldn't have otherwise, because they've been lucky enough to keep their jobs, but they're not going out to dinner and spending money at movies. And so all of a sudden, that disposable income, people are finding creative outlets to sell new things to those people. I really, this might have been an inevitability, but I do wonder how much the pandemic has pushed this idea forward.
I stand by. Let's get over this initial enthusiastic, hump of NFTs being everywhere. There are a lot of independent artists who are now using it as a way to make some to get direct connect to their fans. Like, think of it as, like, if you are an artist and you have a lot of paintings that you don't typically exhibit in a gallery, but you have a big devoted fan base, and you could have a Patreon, or you can sell stuff in your own web store. This is another way for your fans to be directly connected to your work, to say they are the proprietor, the quote unquote owner of that piece of digital art, without being kind of tainted by this, the exploitative aspect and the fraud aspect that we're talking about. And I want to mention, like, the environmental impacts, like Bitcoin, crypto, all of this it's like it's taking up so much compute, and honestly, I don't know if it's sustainable in terms of the environmental impacts of all those cycles, all those processing cycles being used, and the fact that it needs to be sustained for that whole system to be upheld. That's a big question. Like, it's outside of the whole DRM aspect of it.
By the way, I'd be totally fine with an NFT for maybe to complement the deed to my house or the title to my car. Like, I think that's a great idea. Let's make those things digital. But it's the digital artwork that can be copied that is supposed to be unique. I'm not on board with that. That's all.
Tension. You have this tension, the fundamental difference. We all came up of an age where we saw the emergence of digital art, and we understand the ones and zeros, but it may be a backward way of thinking. 10 years from now, we can all be laughing at, and we can all be well accepted of the idea of looking at our individual wallets, digital wallets, and owning and be perfectly content and happy with being owners of the rights or whatever to this NFT. It's a very exciting thing for now. We'll have to see how it goes. All right, let's move on to some pop culture. Now, don't worry, we're going to save some WandaVision talk. We did watch some WandaVision. The finale aired last night, if you're listening to this on late Friday. But we're not going to go into spoilers, and we're not going to talk about the final 2 episodes until the end of the show. Kishore and I will be doing our spoiler review of WandaVision. But there's still stuff happening in the world of pop culture. Today, Friday, also the release of Raya and the Last Dragon, which for me came out of almost nowhere. I mean, I knew the movie was, coming out and on the horizon, but it's still, I'm just not exposed to the same world of advertising as I am in with movies. And unlike Mulan last year, which had been delayed, this is something that is coming out on schedule. But again, going to be a Disney Plus Premiere Access movie where you have to pay $30 on top of your Disney Plus subscription to watch this tonight.
Or wait.
Yeah, it'll be on Disney Plus for all subscribers eventually. I'm going to support.
June 5th is when it'll come out to all subscribers. So 2 months.
3 months.
3 months, sorry.
The reviews were very good. Like I think better than what I saw from Onward and Mulan. I like the reviews to people who got to see it 2 weeks ago. Like they really thought this was one of the best Disney films they'd seen in a while. So I'm on board. I can't wait to watch it.
95% on Rotten Tomatoes, fresh. It's Disney Animation Studio, so not Pixar. And kudos to them for these original stories, just not sequels. They're just and they've been doing so well, from Wreck-It Ralph to Moana to Frozen. I mean, they did Frozen 2, and yes, that made $1 billion. But this is a fresh story.
I'm really excited to watch this. I know some people are turned off by the $30 price tag. I totally understand it. I feel like I've been hearing a ton about this though, because I've been logging into Disney Plus every week because of WandaVision. I see an ad for this like every time I jump in. So like, I feel like I've been bombarded by this for the last month or so. So I'm really excited.
I wonder if NFTs will become like a like a value add, like pay the $30 for the movie and we'll give you 5 unique NFTs that are Disney characters. They're yours.
Been happening with like when you like Fandango was always running when you buy a movie ticket, you could get like a free digital copy of the poster for X movie. So
yeah.
Right. But maybe the first 10,000 people will get their exclusive locked in badge tied to their wallet and Disney Plus account. Whatever. Let's not bring that back in. I'm looking forward to it. There's so much media coming out. There's Coming to America on Amazon Prime, the big sequel to Coming to America. So you got to say Coming to America, Eddie Murphy movie. Everyone's back. Arsenio Hall's back. I think James Earl Jones is back.
Looks like it takes place in Africa.
I've not seen it yet. So
the trailer. Yeah,
it's got to be.
I do not have high hopes.
There's a little bit of New York and a little bit of Africa.
I'm excited. Speaking of things to be excited about, how excited are you guys about this fact that The Simpsons are going to run at least for another 2 years until 2025? Is that right?
Look, I'm about to say some stuff.
2023.
I'm a Simpsons cosplayer. I think no show has been more influential on no one TV show has been more influential on my life than this show.
Wow.
This show broke more ground than any sitcom or other series in our lifetime.
Waiting for that.
There's a reason there is a saying The Simpsons did it exists.
Because they're time travelers.
Yes. They are real life NFTs. I think at the end of the day, though, I have not watched this show in earnest in at least 12 years.
Whoa.
Well, you also have gray hair on your beard and a child and a job.
Yeah, I mean,
so who's watching The Simpsons?
For the people that I think were like that grew up on The Simpsons, like us, I stopped watching around season 9. Like, I think I was still watching through about, like, season 12. What are we at? 24,
Oh,
26,
it's gonna
something
be
like.
30 up to season 34 by the
Yeah,
time this
so
2-year extension ends.
I have much respect. I actually every time I hear it's renewed, I'm like, "Yes, keep it going," and then I never watch it. And so to those people that are watching it, awesome. Al Jean is still in charge of that show. Props to him. An incredible voice cast. You know, over the years, we've lost a few members of the side cast, but the main cast is still all going strong. Uh, it's just it's irrelevant to what it was decades ago.
So the question is the current audience for The Simpsons the same, mostly the same audience, but like who watched it when it was at its peak, at its prime, which you could argue was in the mid '90s and then maybe even late '90s, or has there been a new batch of audience, maybe younger audience, that has found The Simpsons in its 20th year, in its 30th year, that's younger, or why don't, because it's certainly not merchandise. You look at like the things that sell, it's not Simpson school bags and pencils and lunch boxes that are selling that are making money for Fox. So what is it? Because they've cycled, it's outlasted so many shows and great shows from a lot of the shared same creators. I know, let's not just talk about Futurama, but so many shows and comedy and animation itself has evolved so much. What is it about The Simpsons that keeps it enduring? Is it just the fact that they don't want it to end?
I mean, it must just be such a moneymaker for Fox at the end of the day. But its viewership has been declining pretty steadily for the last, I don't know, what is it, 20 years now. So like at like 2000, it was averaging like 20 million viewers an episode, which was massive. Those are
Yeah,
massive numbers.
yeah.
um I think, oh, actually, I take that back. 15 million viewers an episode going back to 2000. Now
Must
they're
see
down to
TV.
3 million viewers on average, and it's been going down every season, which is fine. Like that's the way it is. I want them to find a way to gracefully exit so that we can celebrate what an achievement and how meaningful this show was. But it's time to sunset The Simpsons. Oh, I feel dirty saying it.
I wonder what that is. Like, how do you do that? Because that's not a single episode,
No, a
Like,
season. Give it a season to run
Or
it
2.
off.
Like, if
Yeah.
they know, if they can anticipate, and if they're the people involved, and we know, we've heard the stories of the contract disputes and all the talent and people, they rightly deserve to get paid, and we know that some of the people who work on that show, they're amazing creatively. I want them to be creatively invigorated and challenged, and if that means, and they're the creators, they're the people who run it, if that means being able to actually grow the characters, um, and actually have them have lasting change in the characters over the course of this next season or 2 seasons, that would make it relevant again, and that would be a way. I think you're right, Jeremy, you can't just have a finale and end it. You gotta build up to something and make it relevant again, and take stock of the 34 years that's been on television and what it's meant, because it is historic as a television show, that way. It's made me think about, we're 10 plus years into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and at some point, the stakes were literally half the universe died, right? In Endgame and Infinity War. But how do you raise the stakes, and what does the MCU evolve to? And it's an open question. I mean, I've been thinking about it a lot recently. In one sense that, the leaks have come out, or the rumors of them bringing mutants on, and the announcement of Fantastic Four. But like, what does it look like 10 years from now? What does the MCU look like? And I feel like there's two potential paths, because it's not like a comic book where you can draw Peter Parker and still Peter Parker the same. The actors, like, we as fans associate so much, not just so much to the characters, but the portrayals of the characters. And everyone's getting older, right? And even the people running behind the scenes, Kevin Feige is going to eventually, have to retire at some point. So 10, 15 years from now, MCU either continues on its continuity. The value of the MCU is the shared cinematic universe. So either this cinematic universe continues to evolve and change, character gets phased out, actors get phased out, as we've seen in Endgame, and new characters get introduced, and it's a living, breathing world that is that will at some point exist over dozens of movies, 100 movies, and dozens of TV shows, and Disney finds a way to continue that storytelling, or what I feel like is going to happen is they will reach a point where they're going to soft reboot the MCU. And what's going to matter? The stakes aren't going to be Galactus consuming the planet or Thanos snapping half the universe out of existence, but the stakes will be the relationship that as fans we have watching Tom Holland grow up being a teenager Spider-Man to someone who's going to be in their like early 30s as Spider-Man. And then that getting rebooted and that universe. And it's happened in the comics. They literally have done it in the comics where they've sunsetted a universe and they've said farewell as those characters and then launched a new universe with the exact same characters, with a new writing team, a new creative team. In this case would be a new actor potentially playing that character. Just my thoughts on the MCU.
Yeah, you've got them.
These are the things that I wish we were in person to talk about, and I wish that we could talk about at places like Comic-Con. Our last bit of pop culture news: Comic-Con announced no in-person Comic-Con in San Diego this summer. It's the right call. It sucks for artists. It sucks for fans. It sucks for vendors. And some vendors were worried because they didn't know whether they would like lose their spot in the hall. But obviously, it brings a lot of business to San Diego every year. It sucks. They're going to do their online thing, and they announced that there will be some smaller, perhaps in-person event in November. So we're all kind of looking toward November. No word on New York Comic Con. It's a separate company, separate organization, a different part of the country, obviously. But no July San Diego Comic Con this year. Before we move on, let you know that this episode of This Is Only a Test is made possible because of support from Storyblocks. We all know that video is the most effective way to capture someone's attention, but the storytellers of today are challenged with creating more video content at higher quality than ever before. Thankfully, Storyblocks makes it easy to keep up with the growing demands of modern video content, so you can bring all your stories to life and stop sacrificing your vision due to a lack of time, budget, or resources. Every creator should try a Storyblocks membership. With the affordable subscriptions, you can stay on budget while telling the best version of your story. Storyblocks has an ever-growing library of over 1 million high-quality stock assets, including 4K footage, After Effects, Premiere Pro templates, music images, sound effects, and more. The assets are royalty-free, and with the unlimited all-access plan, you get unlimited downloads of everything in the Storyblocks library. And if you're a member of a large creative team, marketing agency, or media organization, Storyblocks has your back with comprehensive coverage of the entire company that enables you to distribute wherever, whenever. The royalty-free assets, music specifically, are so important. And we browse through music libraries nonstop to find the right piece of music to tell our montages and time lapses in our videos, and it makes a big difference. So learn more and subscribe today at storyblocks.com/only-a-test. Once again, that's storyblocks.com/only-a-test. And now on to tech news. We're going to talk a little bit about rumors, just for the fun of it. Just for the fun of it. The big tech rumor this week is that Nintendo will finally have a successor, maybe not a full sequel, but an upgrade to the Switch this year. We've already seen the Switch Lite, right? The one that where the controllers don't remove, you can't plug it into a HDMI dock.
$100 less.
$100 less, a little more compact, very cutesy with colors, but people have been vying for a Switch Pro. And so while no name has been dropped for no announcement has been made, Bloomberg reported that Nintendo is in talks with Samsung to provide the screen technology for this device, presumably still running off of an NVIDIA Tegra SoC, but that it will have a 7-inch screen, which is half an inch bigger than the current full-size Switch, an inch bigger than the smaller Switch Lite. But the notable detail that they dropped was that it would be an OLED screen with 720p resolution on the handheld side, but that when you dock this Switch Pro Super Nintendo Switch, what have you, it will output at 4K resolution.
Whoa. So that can't be the same chip.
Oh yeah. I don't know if they're going to stick with the Tegra family, is what I meant in terms of the architecture. Backward compatibility is something that I would assume would be a must and make a lot of sense. There's obviously a lot of immediate gut internet reaction of like, what? 7-inch screen, but only 720p? What are we selling? 2018 cell phones these days? The argument is such that if you look at the pixel density of your Nintendo Switch, 720 on that handheld side at a reasonable distance, you're 12 to 14 inches. I know a lot of kids put those switches up to their face. It's going to be fine. And you would rather have better battery life on that device and longer playing time. And with the OLED, you're going to get some natural benefits of just the better contrast and color on those screens. So,
I mean,
totally
our
fine.
chief complaints were battery and screen. That seems both addressed here. And then if it gets upgrades with the chip, there's some big games that are on the docket for the Switch that would make a lot of sense to come out with the announcement of this new Switch Pro. Breath of the Wild 2, a game that we've been talking about for 2 years now. I feel like that's on the docket, so that makes a ton of sense. Now, Nintendo is not a company that always makes a ton of sense in how it does its announcements, so who knows? But I would love to see a new Zelda game with a faster processor, better screen, better output. 4K, Breath of the Wild 2? Yeah, all day long. Come on.
I mean,
Even
there's
if it's
also the
upscaled, fine.
misnomer of like exactly what actually rendering resolution is versus display resolution, right? If we're talking about 4K output, that can be internally scaled. So many games, even on the high end
Fine.
consoles, are not actually rendering, right? And so it all depends on what their deal is with NVIDIA, whoever their chip supplier is going to be, and whether they can get in good supply at a good price a chip that perfectly matches with backward compatibility the targets they're setting for the compute targets for this next generation of game. They're not going to be able. I mean, there's 75 million switches out there in the world right now, and so they're not going to create Breath of the Wild 2 that won't run well for those 75 million customers
True.
out there. So it's not going to be like PlayStation 5 level graphics. Not going to be Xbox.
Well, like we
Series.
talked about before, they already made 2 versions of Breath of the Wild. They made the one for the Wii U and the one for the Switch. I could see them doing the same thing again, like one for the Switch Pro, one for their old school.
You mean
But
assets to be downloaded, like high resolution texture packs, that
yeah,
kind of stuff?
mm-hmm.
I feel like it's more effects driven, things that are more particle effects or lighting or just sheer output resolution and frame rate. I think Breath of the Wild as it currently is looks great at 1080, but if that can get upscaled to 4K at a really good frame rate and with nicer post-processing effects, I don't think I necessarily need much higher resolution textures. The animations are the kind of the hallmark of those games.
Yeah, maybe higher resolution geometry. I don't know.
Yeah.
Nintendo has always done a good job, just like Blizzard, at working with low res assets and making them look like intentional.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily a problem. I'm just wondering how you would maximize, make the most of that pro version.
Yeah, and price point is a big question. They have the light. Will they keep a lineup if it's rumored to be announced middle of the year and out at the end of the year? Do you have a cheap, better, best pricing scheme? And at the report that they are trying to do manufacturing at 1 million units a month, that still feels like this is going to not be enough for people who either want to upgrade or who are just hungry for the best thing possible for their 4K TV. Um, Switch has been out for 4 years now. It was 2017 that it came out. So by the time this eventually comes out, if it is end of the year, it'll be 4.5 years. And it's not a reason to throw away your Switch. The Switch is going to run fine, but households that maybe have 2 kids, like I'm thinking of getting something that I can dock onto the TV and have it 4K, but then also do multiplayer with the current Switch we have.
My 11-year-old daughter has traditionally played more casual games, but she got into Animal Crossing along with the rest of the world, which is a casual game, but I think that was really her in with Nintendo. And over the past month or two, she's finally discovered Breath of the Wild, and I just could not be happier just to see her. And she is just absorbing that world on a level I never did, and she's like treating it like Animal Crossing. Like she's named all her horses, she feeds them all her apples. It's like,
Oh,
it's that, I mean, that game is incredible. And just love that game.
I'm ready for Ring Fit 2. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, you can't play that on the light, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
most amazing thing to me is that they took that chance. They released a platform, a version of their platform without capabilities, like important capabilities. So, but it worked out for them,
Well, you can do it in Labo with that,
right?
right? And how much of that HD haptics did they really? I mean, remember when the Switch first launched and you had the what was it 1, 2, 3 switch where you could they made so good use of the HD haptics. How many Marvel balls are inside your Switch controller? We haven't
Yeah.
really seen developers tap into that. This seems a very first party Nintendo thing and a very like just fun novel thing. And that's the
Well,
joy and delight.
I don't suppose either of you have a PS5 yet.
Not yet.
I was lucky enough to nab one, and it arrived this week. And the robot game that comes with it as the pack in, it's a demonstration of what those controllers are capable of. And dudes, these controllers are the real deal. The haptics in these controllers are beyond the Switch, beyond anything we've seen in VR. And there's one part where you're rolling around things inside the controller, and it just feels like they're inside of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
And this is Astrobot. Don't just call
yeah,
them the robots game. They're classic Sony characters now.
that's right. I apologize.
Yes. Yeah. Um, moving on with tech, it's a couple of little minor bits of tech news. DJI announced and unveiled their FPV drone. If you might have seen pictures of their FPV goggles, it looked like crazy futuristic insect goggles with antenna sticking right out the front of them. Now they have an FPV drone and a novel motion controller that's used to fly it. It's trying to move in that FPV the hobbyist FPV space, but make it a little more accessible, more safety features, obvious with their GPS, so a lot more technology, a lot more expensive, but with things that safety features like the ability to abruptly stop and just kind of hover in space. I've flown a couple FPV drones in my day, and it's mostly ends in crashing. Although the footage, if you subscribe to like the subreddit RFPV, there's some amazing flights and footage in that subreddit. One popped up recently where they found a world champion frisbee distance thrower, and the guy throws the frisbee. He's a distance champion, so incredibly far, and then the drone follows the frisbee as if it's right behind it and sort
Awesome.
of tracks it. And it's a perspective that we never could have imagined 10 years ago. And it takes a tremendous amount of skill to track something like that. So I'm glad that community is still going strong, and DJ has put out amazing technology in their drones before. So it might be worth checking out if you're into that. It's the DJI FPV cinematic drone. For Apple fans, but maybe not so much big fans of their iCloud service, I think it's one of their weakest things. Apple surprisingly introduced a new ability to make it easy to transfer every photo and video you have stored in iCloud to Google Photos to move off of their walled garden platform.
I thought Google made that tool. It's called Google Photos. You put it on your phone and it transfers everything over. It works
That's
for
on your
me.
phone, but not. I mean, Apple has schemed their way into getting you to pay for their storage,
Yeah.
their online storage, iCloud storage, because the photos, if you have a base capacity iPhone, or even if you have a big iPhone and you're filming at 4K 24 FPS, or filming, or taking raw photos, chances are your back library of photos are actually all stored in iCloud, have that cloud icon, right? And if you have Google Photos and you want to do a migration, it's not going to move those photos over. It's only going to move what's locally stored, because their business model for Apple is they want you to pay month to month and pay for storage. Well, this could be getting ahead of antitrust regulation,
Hmm.
just to offer the ability. So it is, you go to Apple's privacy website, sign in, and you find a transfer a copy of your data option, go through those steps, and then you can select all your photos, and the destination can be Google Photos. and you have to have, obviously you have to pay Google the cloud storage fee, but hopefully that is competitive. And I think it's a very useful thing if you want to consider another place to back up your photos, or just the ability, thankfully, to get off of that lock platform um, one day. Right. I see myself potentially doing this just to clear up my iCloud storage and clear up my phone storage, and not have to worry about moving photos from phone to phone to phone to phone. Yeah.
I have to jet soon, fellas.
Okay. I think that's it with tech. We're gonna then do a really quick moment of science with this intro.
Now it's time for a moment of science.
Just really quick 30 seconds. There was a new study that came out that examined 786 pro athletes for lingering effects from COVID. They're looking for things called myocarditis and pericarditis, which is basically enlargements of the sacs around the heart. And they found it very, very rarely happens. That's a relatively small sample. There aren't that many pro athletes in the world, so it's a relatively large sample of pro athletes, but it's not a huge sample size for a medical study. But the initial indication is that the risk has been low for those that have contracted COVID, which is good news, and may inform some other COVID long hauler work. Starship SN10, SpaceX's. This is their heavy launch vehicle. Let's just call it that has been doing a number of maneuvers. SN8 and 9 both exploded. Essentially, they fly 10 kilometers up, go through a fall, reignite the burners, and try to land in a VTOL kind of vertical situation. SN10 looked like they got it right. They seemed to in this free fall, and frankly, like the video footage looked almost CGI.
Oh
It
my
looked so
God.
good. They managed to overcome the situation with reigniting the burner, and it landed. Though when it landed, it seemed to like bounce a little bit. And then 10 minutes passed, and there was a huge explosion at the bottom of the rocket. And SN10 is no more. It seems that when it landed, it had kind of a rough landing that bent some sort of the landing gear. We don't have a full report yet, but that probably damaged some internal things that led to the explosion. I actually see this as a general positive because this demonstrated they're able to figure out the relighting situation, which is a great step forward. Um, Still more work to do. If anything, this was hella entertaining though to watch.
I
Oh
was
my God.
fascinated that it made most of its descent horizontally, which I
Yeah.
assume is in order to get as much air resistance as possible in order to slow its descent, so that
Yeah.
there was less work for the engines to do.
Yeah,
And
and it dissipates heat when it goes into orbital. Um,
mm,
because it's supposed to go suborbital. It's actually supposed to go beyond Earth orbital later on. So yeah, it is about that air resistance and heat dissipation.
that footage, when it goes from horizontal to vertical, that is the CG moment, and it's because they had to really underexpose that light because of the thrusters are so bright, and so everything around. It was a cloudy day with a little bit of pockets of sun, which already made it look cinematic. But that under the landing vehicle view of it turning and the thrusters shooting out and all the vapor, that just was science fiction. I thought at first looked it looked like CG. You're right, and
Yeah.
but yeah,
I,
gorgeous landing.
I'm not the biggest Elon Musk fan of how he is on social media, but he should every time they do one of these just go, "Are you not entertained?" as a quote tweet on all of these things.
All right, let's move to a very quick VR minute. The VR minute, virtual reality this week. So we had the release of the Climb 2 this week from Crytek. For a lot of people, it'll be the first time playing the Climb game. So some of the maps are kind of remakes of the 3 environments in the first game, but they did introduce a urban city environment. Jeremy, have you had a chance to play this yet?
Yeah, I think they did a great job. I'm congratulate them on adding this casual mode where people don't have to worry too much about chalking their hands, and it can just be more of a more of like the Climb, or not, or Climby, or just more like an Arcadia kind of experience, which I think is perfectly valid. I think that there's just people who just want to put the VR headset on and not necessarily fear for their lives.
I forget that the first Climb was not motion controllers. That it was just the gamepad. It had the analog triggers for the half hold grip. But in my mind, because climbing is such a well used mechanic now, an accepted mechanic in VR games,
Yeah.
it was on them to really up the ante and actually make it. And obviously, they have a lot of interesting mechanics in terms of discovering the paths for the handholds and holding that half trigger down. That all is still there. I think they were really bold with the dynamic environments this time around. Things that would it felt very much like an Uncharted experience where you'd grab something and then a thing would fall. Or
Hmm.
like you would be they were brave enough to uh, take you out of control of the movement. So it's not just this static firm hold that you have, and you fall a lot. I fell a lot in this, but I want more city environments. That
Yep.
one's the best one. Just more city environment. So it's a $30 game out now on the Quest 2, and I think well worth checking out especially if you haven't played the first Climb game. Back a couple E3s ago, I played Vertigo games After the Fall. This is a big co-op zombie shooter, very fast paced, almost Duke Nukem like in terms of all the ammo and stuff you were picking up. And they finally have a release date. It's gonna be this summer on PC VR and PSVR, and yet to be announced VR platforms, which probably means maybe Quest. But it's 4-player cross-platform survival action shooter in VR.
Sign me up.
And there's reload mechanics. I'm sure they we love Arizona Sunshine. That one was more tension based. You're low on ammo all the time. That's still a co-op, but they took all those lessons and made this a much more faster paced action shooter. The fact that it's 4-player, I'm just very, very excited about that, and cross platform as well. Speaking of cross platforms, on the Quest, we've been very lucky on the side quest to have Doom 3 made for VR ported over, and officially there will be a Doom 3 for now PSVR. Bethesda is doing a Doom 3 PlayStation VR edition with the expansion packs. Be out later this year. And surprising that they're just going for PSVR this time.
Is this a partnership with Dr. Beef, or did they do this on their own?
On their own. It'll be
That's hard to
really
believe.
interesting to see. I mean, why is it hard? I mean, they have the engineers, they have the IP, they have the source, right?
Yeah,
And
but why now? Like, it's just very interesting timing.
I think that everyone looked at the code and saw it was possible. And
Yeah.
I'll be curious to see how it differs in terms of the interaction and what they may have solved differently. But yeah, Doom 3 out for PSVR sometime later this year. Last bit, have you heard of a service called Plutosphere?
Nope.
It's upcoming service that's promising to allow you to do remote PC VR games over the cloud to your mobile headset, to your Quest 2.
Okay. Well, people do that already with shadow PCs, right?
Yes, but this is then without you having to have your own PC. You log into your Steam account. They have partners that would have data centers, and then if you're on a Wi-Fi 6 connection or 50 megabits internet connection, you can get that, and they take care of the compression. They're using the NVIDIA encoders and trying to get as low latency a signal. So they announced it. It's going to be in kind of early access. They're going to only do side quests, and that's because Oculus just changed their policy to not allow on even App Lab, but definitely not allow in their store applications that allow for cloud-based streaming. They're using
Interesting.
the same argument that they did with Virtual Desktop, is that they want the user experience to be, up to par to their standards of low latency.
Although, ironically, they have approved virtual desktop streaming.
Yes. So, their differentiation there is whether users control the PCs as well. Local streaming versus cloud streaming.
Right.
But the experience should be kind of the same. It's all still going over the Wi-Fi network, and that seems to be where you get the most latency. It's not even the first 50 miles or whatever from data center to your house. It's that last 50 feet of reliability and signal. And I think it's where a lot of companies want to move toward. With 5G, they want to get cloud-based VR working. Maybe a combination of some local rendering with some cloud rendering. That might be the future. All right, that does it for the VR Minute. And Jeremy, I know you got a jet, but thank you for joining us. Listeners, stick around as Kishore and I will talk about WandaVision. And I do have an outro. So maybe Jeremy, you want to stick around just for the outro? Oh, he's already gone. You know what?
We're gonna hold the outro then.
We're going to hold the outro?
Yeah,
I don't have a
let's talk.
WandaVision theme.
Well, we'll just
WandaVision.
start talking about WandaVision. Get out that spoiler light.
Spoiler light is on.
We
Boom.
technically haven't talked about the last 2 episodes, but
It's true.
so these are the episodes that are focused on really seeing. I'm just going to go straight into spoiler talk. Episode 8, we really saw Agatha Harkness in her full glory, her backstory, her powers, her motivation, but more importantly, it resolved a lot of just some of the backstory that we've been going through with this entire storyline.
For Wanda, you mean
For
specifically?
Wanda, yes.
For Wanda, her powers, her backstory, her motivation. Yeah, we got
Yeah.
a dive into both their characters. Having seen the entire series now, that's the best episode. The
That
penultimate
is the
episode is
best
the
episode
best. It's the best episode of the season.
because
So
it was
much
so
was revealed.
focused in a
Yeah.
way. It
and
was
and
really
and
focused on the
creatively story
grief.
told too, like the way
Yes.
they went through her memories, revisiting things that we'd only heard about in terms of the death of their parents, Wanda and Pedro's parents in Sokovia, as well as how she was being trained by Hydra and Baron Strucker to unleash that power, and we saw that Infinity Gem, that Mind Stone. So the way they kind of constructed that whole path down the memory hole, being the format of the episode, was really innovative and just great writing all around.
And I thought they paid off the sitcom piece. I know some are critical that it was all cute, but I thought they paid it off enough. They didn't make
Yeah.
it like the whole focus. They're like, this is the reason. And then we saw it. They paid off the commercials that we had been seeing for many episodes
Did they
in the
though? Did
context of
they?
her life. Well, yeah, especially that first toaster scene that was the first commercial. It was the same blinking light that was on the Stark Industry bomb that landed in their unit.
From a construct point though, it's like those commercials are, I guess, subconscious creations by her to just be broadcast, or are they just for us, the viewer fan benefit of something
Well, they were
novel?
manifestations of the real world, the real world grief that she was processing in creating this world, it showing up in this fake reality that she had created.
I think it was
Um,
more for the benefit of us
oh
because
no, it was
she
100% for the
she
benefit of
watched
us. It
Malcolm
wasn't
Middle
for
on
the benefit.
DVDs, and you don't get commercials on DVDs.
Yeah, okay, fine. Um, there's no doubt. I think that was the best episode. It was creepy. It resolved a lot of the crazy fan theories by sort of excluding them going into the finale, which I think was actually somewhat helpful. The finale. We
Okay.
should just get to
Well,
it.
let's talk about how it ended, right? That last
Mhm.
second to last episode ended with, the Leo DiCaprio pointing at the screen moment. They name dropped her comic book name finally and made it a part of witch lore. She is the Scarlet Witch, not because that's just a superhero name, but because that is something having to do with magic. And the thing that, walking away from the episode, I had to remind myself about is that magic is not new in the MCU. It's a thing that has been fully explored in Doctor Strange, and Thor talks about it in Thor 1, and so it's not, even
Magic and
though
science are the same thing by a
that's right.
different name.
And so it's a thing, it's not out of nowhere that you have a coven of witches, or that you have Wanda having been someone able to tap into magical powers. And the revelation is that the Infinity Stone just unlocked and augmented her powers, didn't give her those powers.
Yeah, so that's the revelation going into the finale. That starts off with Agatha Harkness just having a showdown directly with Wanda. with her kids in tow. And it's very quickly revealed that Agatha Harkness's power is to really absorb other witches' power, other witches and I assume sorcerers' powers. Um, and we see her slowly wear down Wanda. And it was actually quite brutal to watch in a way because Catherine Hahn was just slowly, systematically breaking her down. It wasn't the bruising, Captain America kind of fight. It was just watching Wanda be worn out. And then we got Vision on Vision crime
Whoa, whoa,
with
let's
the
let's go back.
yeah.
I want to say that the Catherine Hahn, while it made for a really fun duel of like flying witches,
Mhm.
I don't think it successfully paid off her original motivation. You get the scene in the second to last, the flashback episode where she kills her mother and her coven because she has tapped into dark magic that she's forbidden to tap into. But if her motivation is she's just power hungry, then that seems kind of shallow. The whole like, just give, I want your power. You are the Scarlet Witch, and I want your chaos
Yeah.
magic. Seems like they didn't really explore that as much as they could have.
Yeah, 100%. And it never felt like, and maybe this is more fan theory than anything else, it never felt like Agatha Harkness was just doing this on her own in the context of the
Mm.
story. Like there's some larger story surrounding her, and we didn't really get any sense of that in that. So I agree with that. I just think the way that she was breaking Wanda down by using her family against her was a great sort of mirror to the grief that Wanda was experiencing.
Well, it forced her to make
Vision
that
on
choice.
Yeah, Vision on Vision
Yes.
crime. So we
So
got White Vision just magically kind of enters the hex, and they're instantaneously battling, and they have this very I mean, I'm just going to call it bizarre battle because they were like they just fight for a while and it looked good and everything else, and they're both using vision powers, but they're also having this like intellectual argument while they're fighting. Um
and abruptly
and
stop fighting to debate, like
I did not care for
philosophical
this.
theories.
When he was like when the Hex Vision, I guess Scarlet Vision says, "Do you know the story of Theseus?" And I was like, "Oh no, no! This is a terrible way to go." And so they have a moment, but essentially, the result of that is that Vision's alive but different is the
Yeah.
output of that fight. I felt very unsatisfied with that resolution for the Vision, because
Yeah,
essentially it's a cheat. It's a comic
it
book
is.
cheat.
He has memory loss. He's going to recover. It's Bucky again,
Yeah.
right? But without the manifestation of all the memories of what happened in the hex, and it's a way for them to leave the door open to bring Vision back eventually. That's what it is.
Yeah.
The fight was beautiful, but it was kind of, I think you're right. Kind of, they didn't develop the White Vision enough. They just kind of ominously had him showing up at the end of the second last episode, and then you're supposed to understand that Sword was able to revive him and reprogram him when Shuri couldn't do that. And the whole identity crisis of it all, I think, was a little too clever for itself.
Yeah, I won't spend a lot of time on Wanda defeating Agatha. I thought it was too cute by half how she beat her. But I did like that Wanda imprisoned her rather than killed her. I felt that was actually true to character, but it set up the best part of the episode, which is Wanda realizing it's time. Well, two things that I think were beautiful. So one is the reveal of her new costume and the assumption of her kind of the next evolution of her powers,
Hmm.
and it kind of made sense. And the outfit, which actually, if you look at some of the posters, you could see snippets of that outfit
Oh,
in different elements of the
I like it.
posters.
Looks great.
I thought it looked great. I thought it was totally believable, but it really set up the payoff of the episode, which is Wanda finally recognizing she has to say goodbye to both Scarlet Vision and her kids
And
and
it wasn't
close
just
the
the saying
hex.
goodbye, but also the answering of who is Scarlet Vision. I think that was the
Mhm.
most powerful lines in the episode is when she verbalizes what he represents, that he is not an entity in itself, but he is the fragment of the Infinity Stone and her love manifest, and that is the closure that she gets.
Yeah, and I thought that whole scene and how they played it out pretty slowly, the slow kind of hex kind of coming to a close was brilliant. And they had also set that up with the townspeople being furious at her for what they put her through, which is actually, really authentic. And so I thought that was actually a nice bit of closure. Had they not had the White Vision escape, I think that's actually the ending of that should have been the ending of the Vision storyline. That whole White Vision thing was just a
Yeah,
MacGuffin, and it would have been
yeah,
even more powerful had they not done that.
yeah.
And then we're left, we see Monica Rambeau kind of start to utilize her powers. There isn't much to say. I would say this is the actual worst scene of the movie is the resolution between her and Evan Peters.
Oh
Um,
God,
uh,
Ralph Boner.
Ralph Boner. Which I get what they were trying to do this whole time, but essentially what it feels like after everything is that Kevin Feige trolled us, which
It's
is
too
fine.
clever by half. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
again, it was a troll. That character amounts to nothing. That whole thing. I get that it was just a manifestation of Agatha manipulating Wanda. That's fine. But the way they set it up, having Monica be trapped by him, none of that made any sense.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
we should get to the actual post-credit stuff after the
Double
resolution.
post credits. Double post
Yeah.
credits. So I'm glad that was there. It sets up two different movies, and for all the fan theorizing, which is
It sets
fun,
up
and
a
all the
TV show and a movie.
oh, you're right. You're right. You're right. Well, the first one I think sets up both. The
Mhm.
first post mid credit scene is Monica Rambeau. You get Jimmy Woo. Bring back Jimmy Woo. No Darcy. Darcy kind of unceremoniously had only
She
one
got
scene.
like yeah, she got short
Yeah.
shrifted. I hope she comes back in Love and Thunder. She was great.
Yes. Yes. Especially with Natalie Portman also being in there. But you have your scroll revelation. So prediction correct, but not the same friend. So they didn't
Nope.
connect too many dots there. But you had one of the FBI agents being a scroll, referencing a child, a friend, her mother, which is going to be Nick Fury, who's up in space. So it sets up not only the secret invasion store, a TV show that Nick Fury is going to be part of, but also we all know Captain Marvel 2 will also be heavily, Monica Rambeau will be a heavy part of that. So those are the two things that sets up. Fine. This is a okay introduction, not a ton of heavy lifting
It
for
was
that
fine.
character. It was fine. And then the second one, I was kind of waiting for a White Vision thing, like kind of a Bucky esque at the end of Winter Soldier, where he walks in the Smithsonian like a Vision thing, White Vision kind of finding himself again. But I'm glad in retrospect, I'm glad they didn't do that. It was Wanda secluded with a drone shot coming into her cabin in the middle of nowhere, and she's in the astral plane. It's a direct callback to Doctor Strange studying in the astral plane, but she's reading now the Darkhold.
Yeah, and you hear as she's studying the Darkhold the voices of her children. And I think the implication is that she's studying this dark magic to do something that you can't do, like bring somebody back from the dead
Or
or
creates life
create
out of
life.
nothingness.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think it's about
And
bringing Vision back. It's about
no.
bringing her children back.
Yeah. And so that would, the implications she would be a villainous figure in Doctor Strange, or set forth the most, the kind of start of that movie of Multiverse of Madness. Like
Mm.
that's the implication I sort of took from that. Um because she's reading a dark magic book. I don't think you walk away being like Wanda is being a good kindly avenger from that.
Yeah.
So and I think that I thought Elizabeth Olsen was really good this entire season. So seeing her have an elevated role in future MCU movies as a result of this is great. It was a nice touch season finale. The whole story of WandaVision is not about WandaVision. It's the fan theories we made along the way. And and I think that was represented in this. Like I was expecting a maybe a Doctor Strange to show up, and like that post credit scene would have been the scene. Paul Bettany trolling us by saying
My
like there was
God.
a major cameo coming, and he was talking about himself.
Oh my God. Too
And
clever by half.
yeah, and
I think what
so
they're realizing is, yeah,
that's the
MCU also
only
plays.
irritation is they laid out some breadcrumbs. People took those breadcrumbs and created, an entire magical loaf of bread, which is unnecessary. But the two breadcrumbs that they laid, Paul Bettany saying there was a major cameo and the Evan Peters casting, I feel like really, they that didn't go anywhere positive. Um, but if you took those away, if those things didn't happen, if they just cast somebody, not Evan Peters, in that role, I would look back on this series and be like, "This is brilliant. It was different. It was genre breaking." I would not say it was at the level of a lot of some of the recent MCU films, but a worthy addition to the canon for sure.
And it goes back to the thing you said at the very beginning when we started covering this TV show, is that this is a show that feels bingeable. And I think if you watch all 9 episodes of the show without having that week to week water cooler talk and theorizing, you lose a little bit of what makes it a
Mhm.
week to week TV show, but you also get a more complete story and a more complete, because the writers aren't writing this, with necessarily like the fan theories that in mind. They're writing one story. And
Mhm.
if you look at what they set out to do, they absolutely accomplished it. They told an amazing story about love and grief in a way that we had not seen in the MCU before, and I think that's an achievement and something that you can really only do in this type of storytelling, in serialized, episodic storytelling.
Yeah, so generally speaking, I think this is a huge success. And it makes me excited about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is just coming in 2 weeks. It's such a quick turnaround. Uh,
Relentless.
Um, but um, but I also feel like they left some things on the table in this show.
Yeah,
They took some easy ways out, and they could have made it. They could have made the weight and impact of that love and grief storyline even more impactful. They really set up an interesting move, and it makes me long for the Scott Derrickson version that we're never going to quite get because we got a taste of horror in the MCU, and it totally fits.
yeah, totally. Um, it also, now we know what TV looks like for the MCU, and it does
Mhm.
look different. It's big budget, yes. You got the stars there, and Vision looked flawless. Like Vision was so good.
Yep.
Paul Bettany performance, the makeup, the costuming, same with all the versatility of Elizabeth Olsen. Uh, but you could tell filmed on these kind of stages and generic studio backlots, and they're not spending 300 million for 2.5 hours. They're spending 50 million or something on 9 episodes. And so I did miss the kind of cinematic flair and all the big budget trappings that you get when for a big budget movie. And I think that I'm still kind of reconciling with that, which I'm like, again, it fits this model. This is a love letter to television as well. But when we move on to Falcon and Winter Soldier, when it's supposed to be big budget action pieces, set pieces, how will that feel? I don't know yet.
I think the recalibration that has to happen in my mind is I'm so used to the MCU films advancing big chunks of story,
Mhm.
introducing new characters, like really just going there. These are small, self-contained stories in the context of the MCU. And so when I start watching Falcon and Winter Soldier in a couple weeks, I'm not going to be like, "Oh, where's Red Skull going to appear in this show?" It's going to be the people in the show are the people in the show, and there
Right.
might be like the slightest bit of hook to something else that's coming, but not a lot. It
Yeah. Yeah.
is just about those people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it allows for character development, slower paced storytelling, um, and fills in the blanks, the emotional blanks between the movies. Let the movies tell the big the big stories, and maybe we can't expect a lot of crossover also between the shows as well because the way they're produced. So, it's not a lot of like, where are the rest of the Avengers while this is going on, and like, well, will this character pop in here? Like, that's not what these TV shows are for.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, what the TV shows are for is taking the Avengers that never starred in their own movie and developing out their characters more.
Yeah.
That's how I'm going to view them going forward. Even though Bucky has had a lot of screen time, the Falcon hasn't. We know very little about him, so that's what I'm hoping for. Wanda got a ton of development now as a character. I'm excited about her character. I don't really need to see the Vision anymore. I think I'm kind of, yeah.
You know what it feels like? It feels like reading a comic book.
Yeah,
Feels like reading
it
a
did.
6-issue miniseries, and I'm totally cool with that. All right, there goes our 9-week spoiler talk on WandaVision. We'll be back in 2 weeks to recap the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Thanks for joining us this
Well,
week. Good to see you, Kishore. You have anything you want to shout
yeah.
out?
I was just gonna say next week is making of WandaVision, so we might actually get some behind the
Oh,
scenes stuff. So
ooh,
I think we're not quite done with WandaVision. I'll be really interested to see them talk about those cinematic shots where they change the aspect ratio and the homage to all the classic TV shows. So we're not quite done there. And the Marvel train is just continuing. Hop on board.
it's warm inside, and everyone gets a good view. All right, we have a new outro this week. Emailed to us. We're accepting new outros. This one was sent. Who was it sent by? Oh, AKA Gajba. Well done. Here we go. I haven't listened to it yet, but hopefully it's a good one.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Test it.
The EDM duo Daft Punk, they are breaking up. That's a big deal.
Is it a big deal? Okay, they're humans. Go on with their lives. Enjoy their
Are they
their
humans?
catalog.
They're human? I don't know about this.
They're
I don't know about this
French.
at all.
Test it.
So recent. I know exactly where that's from. All right. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.